Hello. I'm gonna start doing videos more like this, just promptu on the fly. The last few months, my time has gotten less and less abundant, and while I've tried to put a lot more efforts into doing kind of grassroots fundraising to work on, I've had experience hiring YouTube teams and delegating the production process to make things look nice, have pretty art come over me when I talk, and all the other things that get the views, so to speak. Um, there just seems to be, I started a micro section on my GitHub Reflections repo yesterday just because there was some small thing I wanted to talk about. And it's the same thing here. I just want somewhere where I can put the thoughts out that are important, that are timely, and that provide a public benefit, but that I don't have the time, the resources, or the wherewithal to organize it. I've been working for like 20 hours on this one post on frickin' software licenses, and it's just it's a I when I do things, this is a problem I had growing up in school. I was a really great student, but I wouldn't, I'd have like an assignment, and instead of doing the assignment, I would get like a third of the way through and realize, wow, there's this other nuanced thing that barely relates to this at all, but it's a cool thing that is work that would make this very marginally better. And so I would go off and spend 3 days doing that other thing, even though it was doing like a week, and it had nominal, it had like it was marginal, right? I mean, 80% of the result you want is super easy to get, and it's that last 20% that is incredibly difficult. And I would always take the approach that I want to do it along the way, make sure that everything is done exactly to par at the highest standard, and execute it so that the final product is as close as possible when I care about it, with something I'm passionate about, as to that ideal reality as can be. And that's the approach I have had throughout life on all my projects. I wanted to start trading stocks, so I used the permissionless power of the search engine to look up what are stocks, and since then I guess I've stopped researching it now because I sort of once you master, you figure out the main things, and then it's just more like market timing, events like that. um, Probably the pinnacle of all of that experience was that post I did on LinkedIn on the micro W strategy. And it's interesting because most people, you glance over. We did an experiment last week, and I'll be incorporating this into the third Let Me post. But, it was a very meaningful 30% move off of a very concrete piece of news evidence that just gave to the community as just a document, just this is the news, no context or recommendations or advice or anything around it. And a couple of select members tuned in on it, but a vast majority of it was washed away and ignored. And this is troublesome for me because it is so abundantly clear that the absolute best asset management comes from a very small subset of investors that are systemically ignored unless they contribute extreme resources to marketing themselves, their returns, and their portfolios to. I had a meeting this morning, and the term that was used was big investor to account for the wealthy, so to speak, or the institutional funds or the pools of capital built for those groups. And that is the epitome of the centralization of capital, which I think causes so many challenges in our society. It's a little bit more than I'd like to get into here. What I want to talk about today is privacy, something that has naturally been a core tenet of human life since the dawn of time. The idea that I can do something in these four walls with the expectation that there's not someone else looking through that camera, listening to that microphone. That I can be at peace, knowing I have the solidarity to execute work and make a choice when something I've been building should go public. And it's a decision that seems more and more important to founders nowadays, is this control over not just physical, real, tangible privacy, but also there's a number of privacy-based blockchains, many of which obfuscate the data to protect privacy at the expense of transparency and auditability. Well, I appreciate that there is a concern over the banks, the credit card companies, people being able to identify your gender, your age range, maybe even who you are, based on the things you buy at the store, or your traffic patterns, or your phone movement. These are all valid concerns in the realm of basic technology. If I shouldn't be able to buy a pen and the government has a microphone in it. Sure, it makes sense in the physical world to have that sense of privacy, whereby you can talk freely and not have to worry about someone looking over your shoulder. That makes sense. But when I see these arguments construed, now I don't want to touch on payments, but I want to touch on assets. When I see them construed to asset blockchain protocols, I start to have some grave concerns, because if we keep this existing system, if we allow the incumbent opacity of financial markets, that opacity breeds fraud. It's what let the first bankers give out more gold receipts than there was gold in the vault. It's what let brokers give out more stock entitlements than there were shares of stock. And it's what lets the big crypto exchanges give out more token allocations than there are tokens. I've made a number of videos on this channel addressing these points in more detail. The Kiyosaki book on fake comes to mind. What I'm going to do with this format is not try to give you total comprehension. I'm not going to really link anything that I talk about in the notes here. And the reason why is because I just want to lower the barrier to sharing some aspects of my perspective with you on a real quick snap basis that I can do whenever I have a spare minute between work. I believe wholeheartedly that if we can replace this opaque securities trading and settlement regime with a transparent, auditable, and functioning blockchain today, that global markets will seamlessly interconnect, everyone will have a much easier investing, participation, and ownership experience, and it will enable the next generation of asset managers to grow up not begging these centralized institutions for permission, but instead empowering them with the tools to trade on-chain, real-time, with their own custody. to build a track record that anyone can confirm, not with a PDF statement from an intermediary, but with public key cryptography that is secure, easy, and accessible to share with anyone. And the net economic benefit of that I see as so gargantuan that the question of privacy over your portfolio or your major assets or your large holdings, as long as it's pseudonymous, there doesn't seem to be a valid reason to keep that info gate-kept, privatized, and in some cases manipulatable. And if we look forward to a future where a seed round is not some backdoor agreement between a company's founders and a few centralized pools of capital, and is instead an open, transparent, public auction to qualified participants that actually invokes supply and demand. It presents the opportunity to as many as applicable to implore competition for valuations. Government recently had an auction of some seized bitcoins that sold. One of them sold for like $290,000. That was a while back. That alpha, the value that people have on things, it's materially different, and it only gets realized when there's transparent access to the opportunity in question for the creation of a book to build those bids and define what the market esoterically calls a valuation. And that's why, for things to be provable, for them to be certain, and for your portfolio to embrace all of the gains that Web3 promise in investment management, the only execution path to that end reality is radical transparency in the messaging of transactions. And it doesn't mean that there's a person constantly putting out alerts and reports and declaring how a company's fundraised. But it does mean that the data is there, the raw information is there, and anyone can go back and check it. Recently I made an issue in the GitHub docs repo for Stellar on the early distribution of lumens, because there have been a lot of it's just a lot of people looking into what the early distribution has been. It's not like it's opaque, it's not like you can't figure it out. But just to give an example, there was a very large early backer of Stripe, and you have to look through Reddit posts, go on the Block Explorer, actually view them, look at the transfers in and out of Coinbase after the network launched. There's a lot of investigative work that anyone can do because it's on the blockchain. You don't need permission to understand what's happening here, to participate in the next one, or to confirm that everything is done to the standard of the law. And that's the promise that this distributed ledger offers us. And it's just the application of it on a wide scale that is to be mastered, right? And that's why I just think it is so crucial that the raw information be presented to everyone so that we can have this collective, informed, and cohesive market that does push up those valuations and let capital flow to where it's best utilized. And in the process, give the adequate disclosures needed of exactly what's going on in real time with a company's shares and the money its investments. There's so many further political challenges that get tackled as soon as you have the wallets transparently on chain. And I wanted to get out there that it seems quite important and it's something I really care about, because you need to have that base reference of the core information that today you cannot see. It is permissioned. You have to. I just was on this one platform seeing how everything was, and you have to create an account, verify your ID, confirm your accredited investor status, put in all your personal information, and only then can you see the bids and offers on an order book. And that's not efficient. It's not fair to the billions of people on this planet that don't have a lot of the necessities they require from American citizens specifically. And it's not how you build an efficient market system. So the reporting, fine, that's separate, that's different. But that base raw data, the core operations of capitalism, that's what we need to make public.